Good morning, everyone. My name's Steve. As Tom said, I'm one of the directors at ATG. We do all this type of stuff here. Probably the easiest way to explain is we do all types of IT for the creative world. And we also do some events I'm going to talk to you a bit about at the end. I'm going to talk to you about something that hopefully won't scare you. So I'm not like Greg, who's going to try and scare you with something that isn't scary. I'm going to try and not scare you with something that is scary. And when we start talking in these type of events, everyone loves to talk about hacking. So we have growth hacking, keyword search hacking, social media hacks, local business hacks, and 10-minute YouTube hacks in 5 minutes. I even saw one yesterday that said anti-hack, hack marketing, which really confused me. But I'm not going to talk about these type of hacks. I'm going to talk about these type of guys that are always depicted like this, and I will come back to that in a second. But I named this talk An Unusual Story, and I wanted to talk about this guy. So many in the room of you will know him. He's Stephen Bartlett. You may know him as being one of the new dragons. You may know him from his podcast, which is brilliant. But I want to talk to you a little bit about something that happens in his book. And in the cybersecurity world, you would imagine there are hundreds of stories around things that have happened when it comes to hacking and cybercrime. But you'd be surprised, none of them are published. It's funny that. But Steve put one in his book, which is brilliant, because I get to talk about it, because I'm sure he's happy for me to talk about it if it's in his book. And the book is brilliant. It's called Happy, Sexy Millionaire. Strange title, but it is very good. It's not about hacking, it's about how to be successful in business. But the time I want to talk about in the book is when he started Social Chain. So he had an agency called Social Chain. It was going really well. They had a slide, because if you are an agency and you're a cool agency, you have to have a slide. And they were in a stage where they were really going through quite a big area of growth. I think there were about 100 employees at the time. They were just about to get a big round of funding that would take them on to the next level. It was a really, really key part of that time. And on this one day, they were going paintballing. This isn't going the way that I thought it was going, where it was going to turn like PJ and Duncan and someone was going to get horrifically injured. But they went paintballing, took the whole team out, and the two guys at Social Chain, Stephen and Dominic, had a phone call in the car together. Because Dominic had received an email that just said, "I assume this wasn't for me." It was received from their biggest financial backer to date, someone that really wanted to put a lot of money into the investment. They'd been working together for months, and they'd almost had the deal done. They were pretty much ready to sign on the dotted line, and then they received this email from the guy. They were a bit confused, but then as they were trying to work out what he was talking about, they received another email from a major client who just said, "Consider the campaign cancelled." It was at this point they started to panic. That "consider the campaign cancelled" was from a major film network for a multi-million-pound deal for them to run all the social media campaigns for the film. So at that point, they had to cancel the paintballing day. They needed to understand what was going on. Why was people cancelling things? They didn't really want to do it on their phones. So they headed back to their office. And in the office, they set up a bit of a war room to work out what was going on. It was at this point they started asking, why are you cancelling things? What's happening? And one of the financial backers just sent back the email, with these comments. So the comment was from Dom, one of the directors there, and it said, "Forward this message to you, Lisa, who is his assistant. Can this guy not take a hint or what? Just tell him Steve's busy on that day, or he's away on business. We've got way more things to focus on." And if you are looking to invest in a business, a multi-million-pound deal into a business, you probably don't want to receive an email that looks like it's come from someone internally that says they don't really care about you. So that was why he'd sent that email to say that, obviously this wasn't for me. It turned out that every one of their clients had been contacted in a really similar way. They'd looked into an email, the person had received an email with what looked like an internal comment to say something offensive to that client. It's something I've never seen previously myself. The reason I've said this is an unusual story is because usually they're looking for some kind of financial gain. The cyber criminals at the other end, you don't see this kind of corporate espionage happen too much in the marketing and media world. They usually want to steal something, they always want to get money. This was just someone that was looking to destroy their business outright. At the time, they did have quite a lot of people who had been in the marketing world a long time. They were a fresh agency. They didn't like that this hot social media company were getting a lot of business. But it was a crazy time for them when every single one of their clients had received emails that were offensive to the person that was receiving them. And it turned out they had 37 unhappy clients. They hadn't sent any of these emails. Someone had hacked into their systems and started sending them to all their clients. Obviously, with usual hacks, you can spot things. It looks pretty similar. It looks weird, and you'd expect it to come from a dodgy address or something like that. But this was sent from Dom's email address. It was sent in relation to something that was happening. It was related to the campaign they were working on. And it really did destroy their business. There's a quote here that I won't expect everyone to read, but this is the quote from the book where they said they lost 80% of their clients that day. The 20% that stayed with them knew who they were, and they knew that they wouldn't do something like that. And even the ones that believed them when they said they got hacked didn't want to work with them anymore because their lawyers or their cybersecurity team said, no, it's not going to work for us. We can't let you know about stuff that's going to come out in the future when your cybersecurity is obviously not working very well. So it really did destroy them, and there's a horrible bit at the end of that, where the young team member was crying because she'd lost all her clients and didn't really know what to do. It is a really weird story when it comes to cybersecurity, but it's something we see very similar all the time. And I'll kind of come on to how we could have avoided it. But someone got into their email systems and destroyed their business with a single hack. Spoiler alert for the end, it was okay. Stephen Bartlett went on to be kind of okay. So I just want to do a quick poll, and feel free to not put your hand up because I realize this is a weird thing to ask, but who in the room's been affected by cybercrime in some way? That's good to know. So I've been asking that question for probably the last 5 years in different ways, and it used to be everyone kept their hand down. It's interesting, people don't talk about cybercrime the way they do about normal crime. If you were robbed in the street and someone stole your wallet or your car keys and then stole your key or broke into your house, the first thing that someone said to you wouldn't be, well, did you have locks on the door? Did you do this? Did you do that? You'd have some empathy. Whereas it seems to be in cybercrime, people instantly jump to, well, what did you do wrong? And I think that's maybe some narrative that we need to change, and we need to really start talking about cybercrime more and more, as well as protecting ourselves. But it was great to see a lot of you put your hands up. And if any of you want to come and tell me your story, I'd love to hear the stories, how it went, and if I can use them in talks, even better. I'll always keep you anonymous. But cybercrime is a huge problem. And going back to this chap, this is kind of how we see cybercrime all the time. It's how it's depicted in the news. We usually see them in hoodies. They're always wearing gloves. I don't know if you've ever tried to use a keyboard with motorcycle gloves on. It is quite difficult to do. But they are generally, nerdy kids sat in a bedroom with kind of gloves on, really, really bad posture, it would seem, and going into it. But that's not the reality of what actual cybercrime is. Cybercrime looks more like this, where you have a leader, different teams, you have, kind of the people who are sorting out the money. Some of these crime gangs are literally hundreds of people working in very organized crime. Cybercrime generally falls under organized crime now. And it is huge business. The reason that they do this is because it's worth a lot of money. In the UK, they think the cost of cybercrime is around 27 billion. It's going up and up and up. I think globally it's touched $1 trillion now, or it's predicted to within the next few years. It's a huge, huge amount of problem. And they are getting that money from businesses like us. They aren't getting it from the Barclays and the Deloittes of the world. They are very much getting it from lots of small companies. But how do they get it? So if we go back to Dom and potentially how he could have had his email hacked, the first thing is data breaches. So data breaches happen pretty much, well, more than daily. So I think in the last year, there was probably 1,500 odd, and 36 billion records. And here are some of the organizations that have had data breaches over the last few years. And the reason these data breaches are important is because if you are using your login details on Twitch, let's say, for instance, those of you who like watching gamers or stream yourself, or on MyFitnessPal to log how many calories you've had in a day, if you also use that username and password on your work email address, suddenly your work email address has also been breached because they will just go and try and log in with the same username and password. That is one of the biggest problems we see in the world today, where people are sharing passwords across systems, something kind of not even that important gets breached, and then they're hacked because the person has then gone and used that email address and password to try and log into anything else. We see it happen all the time, that people gain access to email accounts that way. Something really non-committal gets hacked, something big gets hacked because of it. The other way is phishing. So it's probably more likely that I'd imagine Dom at Social Chain got caught on phishing. And I think everyone thinks about phishing as everyone having a rich uncle in Nigeria that they're trying to give money to and nobody will take it. But these have kind of changed over the last few years. What phishing looks like in this kind of day and age is they are researched. They will go on and find out about companies, gain a little bit of information because it's worthwhile for them to send that phishing email to you. Job applications, we see them come through on job applications quite a lot. Here's my CV, just click the link to download it. When you go to download it, that then fishes for your username and password, and I'll show an example of that in a second. Request for quotes, huge ones we see at the moment, and I've got some screenshots from that. And then existing customers. So if you are hacked, someone gains access to your emails, the first thing after they've worked out whether you're worthwhile or not, they're probably going to try and start launching some attacks from you to your customers. So you will have probably received emails from either contacts or customers, and you know it's not from them. These attacks are getting better and better and better. They will always look like something genuine. They very rarely these days look rubbish. And here's an example of one, and I would easily fall for this myself potentially. So company receives, I blurred this out because it's a genuine one. Company receives an email saying, hi, we're looking for you to quote for this work. Here's a request for a proposal. Just click this link to go to it, and it takes you to this proposal invitation. In the agency world, in the digital marketing world, loads of people use Adobe Spark. It's pretty normal to receive these type of things. If you have a look at the top, though it's quite tiny, it is a genuine email, genuine web address, and it's also got the HTTPS padlock as well. So all the things you're told to look for are not failing this. Also, the email protection stuff that we put in place, because all of that is genuine, it's come from a genuine person, it's going to a genuine link, it's very difficult for software to pick up that that's dodgy. So when you get through to it, you'll click View the PDF document, and then it asks you to log in because it's already told you that for you to access this, you need to confirm it's you. You put in your username and password, and then that's when it takes your phishing details. As you can see on this one, it is a dodgy address. It's redirected you to a dodgy address. But that means that you would have needed to check that you were ready to see that change. When you go to log in, so sign in with your Outlook, you'll put in your username and password, and then suddenly they've got access to your emails because that username and password is used to access your emails. We see this a lot with what we call business email compromise. So once they've got into your account, what do? So generally, they will gain access to you via phishing. They then will look at your compromised account, and they will look for stuff that's interesting. So they might say, they'll search for invoice, overdue, all those type of things that are finance-based. It's usually the accounts department. Then they will stop you receiving any emails to do with that company when it comes to finance. They'll then email the customer and start chasing the money for you. It's really helpful. If you're waiting for the money, they're going to start doing that for you. The problem is that they're then going to say, we've also changed our bank account and we need you to pay it into a different address. That's when, obviously, the criminal gets that money and then everyone loses. The banks, in this instance, do not give you your money back. They used to, they don't anymore. Because you have agreed to pay that to a new person. You've ticked the box to say, yes, this is a new payee, I know all about it. And then they've got that money. I had a phone call from a friend during lockdown saying, can you speak to this person I know? He was a plasterer. This had happened to him. They're only a two-man business, and they'd lost £28,000 just as we went into lockdown. And there was no way to get that money back. I found out what had gone wrong. He'd been phished and someone had logged into his account and done exactly that. But there was no way to get that money back, and a horrific time for it to go wrong as well. Because the company said that they've paid it. You told them to change the bank details, and they've paid it. So yeah, it does cause an issue. And then they will launch an attack from you, because everything in the kind of tech world when it comes to cybersecurity is based on trust. How much trust does that thing have for me to be able to approve it? So if I'm emailing out, then I know that the other end it's trusted because it's coming from me. Well, if it's not coming from me, the other system doesn't know. The other big thing that we see away from email is ransomware. You may have heard of ransomware. It's been around a long time. Probably the most famous one is when the NHS got taken out. It's a virus basically that locks all the computers' data. So you can't access anything, so you can't access your company files, you can't access any HR documents, you probably can't access your recovery documents because it's locked them as well. And this is where the big majority of the money comes from, because to unlock it, you need to pay. And I was with a guy a couple of weeks ago at an event, and he works on an incident response team in America, so goes into companies when this has happened. And usually companies can't afford for a team to go in, but these guys were a major company, and they were asking for $30 million. They paid $25 million. They managed to negotiate down to $25 million. These guys had backups. They had they'd had all the information they needed, but they were really concerned because ransomware 2.0, as we call it, destroys the backups, will take your credentials, and then the big one is they will say, we'll leak your information to the public. No company wants their information leaked to the public. Particularly if you are doing a marketing campaign for a car manufacturer and they don't want the world to know about a new car coming out, a film production company who don't want to know about a film coming out, or pretty much anything in the financial world. So ransomware has gone from something that was an annoyance that we could kind of fight with good backup to being kind of really, really scary now. But there are things that we can do to protect ourselves against it. And there is some good news. So, like I said, these organized crime gangs, we are kind of winning. So globally, there are big, big projects to try and crack down on this. And just before Christmas, one of the big ones called Reveal, globally they were taken down. So it was a big interconnected police project, and they got taken down, and they haven't come back either. Now that's not to say that probably 50 of the people that were working for them will come back, but these guys in particular, they've popped back up again a couple of times when they've been caught before. They haven't come back since. So we are winning in some ways. And everyone asks me, what can we do to kind of fight against this. So I want to spend the last 10 minutes looking into it. And I thought I'd start with things that I've learned from working with companies over the last kind of 12 months. I go into a lot of companies and look at their cybersecurity, look at pretty much all their technology actually in a variety of ways. And then I break it down into three things of their people, their process, and their technology. And these are some of the things that have kind of been striking over the last probably 12 months. The COVID effect is huge. People working from home does create a risk that needs to be thought about and protected. It was easy to protect someone and their data when they came into work, worked on a server, worked on a computer, were there 9 to 5 and then went home. We could do everything in that person for that person. But now when they're working early in the morning, late at night, in a coffee shop, in the pub, on holiday, I know plenty of people that work on holiday abroad, it becomes a lot more difficult for us to protect it. But there are ways that you can do it. Usually things like policies and procedures come in massively here, and I'll mention them in a second. We don't see many people going through cyber awareness training, mainly because people think it's boring. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to click on a presentation and just go, yeah, I know not to write my password down. I know not to do this. So it needs to be interesting, and it needs to be ongoing as well, because things change. So cyber awareness training, really, really important in a team. Passwords are awful. I spoke to a guy who's a lot cleverer than me, runs a big hacking company that hack banks, etc., for a living. And I said to him, it must be really clever how you do it. He says, no, not usually. We just work out where we are. If they're in Manchester, they try and log in with one of the boss's addresses and an email address of Ronaldo or Old Trafford or Old Trafford 1, Man City, and it's usually one of those. Or they just go on their Facebook account, work out what their kid's name is, and then just put that in a 1 on the end or an exclamation mark. He says, we never have to do anything clever. People think we're really clever, but the easiest thing to do is just pick up someone who's doing something badly. And these are the 25 most popular passwords. You'd be amazed, wouldn't you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, most popular password. I love you, I always like that one, that's nice. And then I like whatever. I think that's some teens coming into the workforce, that is. But Google survey found, and this is an important thing, 65% of people reuse passwords across multiple, if not all, sites. I bet if I asked you to put your hand up, now I won't do this, and say, do you use the same password anywhere? I would put my hand up. So I do it all the time. If I don't care about the sites where I'm putting that in, I will use the same one. I usually use my password manager, but if I haven't got that available to me, I will use the same thing. If it's anything that I care about, I will always put it into my password manager and get that to generate it for me. And also, the interesting thing is that even though 65% of people were doing it, most people, 91%, knew that they shouldn't be doing it. So I don't know what we can do about that. The big thing is, to get this out of the way, password managers are amazing. They do all the work for you. There are very affordable ones out there. If you're a business, there's business ones available. Come and have a chat to us. We can always recommend one. But a password manager will store your password securely. It will generate it, and it'll also fill it in when you go onto the site, so you don't even need to fill it in either. They are really, really helpful, and they stop a lot of this problem. Two-factor authentication isn't being used. So in the case of Dom being hacked, he could have easily prevented someone gaining access to his email account from outside of the business by just implementing two-factor. Two-factor is that annoying code it asks you for when you log in. It is annoying, but it does an amazing job of stopping people not logging into your systems. And the thing that I'm a big advocate of is looking at all your systems and enabling it for everything. Because most companies now, if you've got a decent IT company or you've got a decent internal IT person, will have it enabled on your email account. but people don't have it enabled on their HubSpot, they don't have it enabled on Google Analytics forces you to have it now, which is great, but email marketing platforms, data storage platforms, they don't have it enabled on that. I went to an agency recently and we wrote down every single cloud service that they use in some way or another. And it's literally, I think they were using 63 different systems across the business. And then we created another column in that spreadsheet to say, have you got 2FA enabled? And I think it was like 3 of those 63. So it's really, really important. Policies and procedures. I will ask a hands up here, because who in their business has policies and procedures when it comes to IT and technology? Okay, quite a few. Okay, that's more than usual. That's great. Policies and procedures really help you where you can't put technology in place. So if you want someone to work specifically at home, have a policy that says how you want them to work. If you don't want them to use their own computer, if you don't want them to log on to bar's Wi-Fi, if you don't want them to do X, Y, Z, have a policy that does it. And procedures for when something does happen is really important. Have an incident response procedure, so when you're Dom on the way to paintballing, you can just straight away go, well, we've been hacked, right? It's annoying, but we know exactly what we need to do. Here's who we need to contact, here's what we need to do. They vary massively dependent on who you are as a business. So finally, what can we do to prevent the risks? Well, if you buy all that stuff, this is a slide from about, I think, 2 years ago, something like that. It's probably about double the size now because there's so many cybersecurity startups. You will still get hacked. There is so many products, it's very difficult for us to say exactly what you need, but I thought I'd give you a couple of pointers. The first thing is I want everyone to understand the risk to their business, and it will be different for every single person in this room. It really, really will be. It's different for every client I work with. If they just use one laptop and they only use email, their risk is a lot lower. We just protect that laptop and their email account. Understanding your risk is really important. And then solutions that I think should be in place. The obvious one, well, this is our old standard. So this is what we used to have pre-2021. So every client had this. Antivirus, everyone in this room, I'd imagine, has antivirus on their computer. You'd feel weird if you didn't have it. I want you to feel weird if you haven't got any of these as well. Patch management, so when an update comes out, making sure that it's installed and it's updated in good time. DNS protection, so when you're going on the internet, you're protected and every website you go to, is genuine. Email protection, so it will stop those emails coming through and those phishing attacks. And two-factor authentication on everything, as I've mentioned. This year, we've moved on to having a human security operations center for all our clients. Someone looking at systems 24/7 to make sure that those ransomwares aren't happening. Ongoing training and testing, like I said. Password manager, because they're really important. Dark web monitoring, so you can see if you're involved in any of these data breaches on the web. And also some lived policies and procedures. Finally, there's a government-backed scheme called Cyber Essentials. It's a really good place if you're looking where to start. Please do look into it, speak to us. We're a Cyber Essentials certification body. It is really a good way if you're looking for an individual place to start. And finally, presume you'll be hacked. If you're prepared, you've tested your defenses, you've got a plan, and you're insured, I won't go into too much detail about insurance, I'm not an expert, but if you have all those things in place, at least then if it does happen, you know what to do and you can minimize the impact. And I'd love you to start reporting those cyber attacks. Of all the people who put their hand up at the start when I said who's been affected by cybercrime, I'd love to know how many of you reported them. They never get reported. There's two ways you can report it. Action fraud is great, or you can also send it to, if you receive a phishing email, send it to report at phishing, and it will be sent off to the NCSE for them to sort it out. Going back to Dom and Stephen Bartlett, they were fine. But I love this way that Steve wrote this at the end, and I will read this out. So from a bird's eye view, it's unquestionably clear that the situation would have been fatal for our business if we hadn't acted appropriately. Optimism, proactive, T and focus. Without these three things, I wouldn't be here with you. Without you reading my book. And Social Chain, $200 million social media juggernaut that employs 700 people around the world probably wouldn't exist. Having those plans in place and knowing how you can react really does save your business. And then finally, we run creative events. You guys obviously are Midlands based. You like creative type events. We'd love for you to join us our free events as well. We have one on the 7th of July with Andy Nairn, who's an incredible author and creative director. And then later in the month, we have one with Paul Longley, who's talking about mental health inside the creative industries. Creative industries, I found out the other day, have 3 times more likely to be affected by mental health issues than any other industry. So we're trying to do what we can to improve that. The events are free. Feel free to register. Love to see you there. We have them in the Midlands. The next one's at Villa Park. And thank you very much.